Hi, welcome to the Alex and Dom show. I'm Alex,
And I'm Trey.
and Dom's sitting this one out because he said he wasn't interested in whether the moon landing was fake or not. Uh, I'm of the opinion that it has to be real, and Trey is of the opinion that it is fake. So, before we talk about whether it was real or fake, let's give some background on the moon landing. The idea of going to the moon started in the early 19th century, or late 19th century, and early 20th century, with Jules Verne talking about going to the moon and the moon being made of cheese and stuff. And but the real idea of reaching the moon started in 1903. It was published in 1903. It's the exploration of cosmic space by means of reaction devices by Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. So he wrote about the realistic proposal of a space flight to go to the moon. The Nazi Germany, they were the first ones to really be gun ho about going to the moon. Their creation of their V2 rockets had a vertical test flight in June 1944. After the war ended, not the world ended, the war ended. Operation Paperclip. We got a lot of Nazi scientists in America, most notably the Vernon von Braun, who was the head of NASA during the space program.
Mm-hmm.
So, so obviously we're going to be talking about the most iconic moments in human history: the 1969 Apollo 11 mission, the first successful mission to land a man on the moon. The story is incredible. It's about a credible ambition, a race against time, and the extraordinary courage of three astronauts: Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. It's a story of humanity pushing the boundaries of what we thought was possible. So, it's going to be a very interesting story. Setting the stage, the space race. The story of Apollo 11 doesn't begin in 1969. Really, to really understand the gravity of the moon landing, we have to go back to the early 1960s, when the space race was in full swing. At the height of the Cold War, space exploration had begun, the ultimate symbol of technological supremacy. The United States and the Soviet Union were in a fierce competition to prove who would conquer space first. It wasn't just about science. It was about showing the world which superpower had the best system, the best scientists, and ultimately the better future. Because we have people living on the moon now.
We do not.
I know. Saying, like, what were they thinking? Like, oh, we got to get up there to put people on the moon. In 1957, the Soviets launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, into space, and sent shockwaves to the United States. A year later, in 1958, the U.S. responded by forming NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, headed by Vernon von Braun, former Nazi rocket scientist. And let me tell you an interesting fact about Vernon von Braun.
Besides that he's a Nazi?
Yeah. Well, it goes along with that. He had a rocket factory, and he would hang the slowest Jewish workers as a I guess incentive for the other Jewish workers to work faster. This is the person that we brought over to head NASA.
Hopefully he wasn't hanging anybody here either.
I mean, well, they were willing to look past the atrocities he committed in Nazi Germany, so why not here? President John F. Kennedy knew the stakes were high. In a bold move, he declared in 1961 speech that America would land a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth by the end of the decade. Sadly,
He died.
He was not able to see his dream come true.
don't know if it was his dream,
It was the American dream at the time.
which is stupid.
But,
America's,
He was
they
not.
couldn't dream bigger.
What's bigger than the moon?
Why you even worry about the moon? I don't get any of the fascination with the moon.
Okay, well, it started with an arms race that it was kind of space race and arms race going at the same time, but we were pretty much trying to outspend the Soviets, and a capitalist economy is always going to win out over a communist company or country, because the communists, it's pretty much all the rich people have the money and the country's poor. And capitalists, a poor person can rise themselves up to be rich. In the communist country, that can't happen. The rich stay rich and the poor stay poor.
Okay, well, what does that have to do with the moon?
It was about, I don't know, it was about spending money. I think it was more about if we could put armaments in space. I think that was the real mission.
It was
we were
still-
trying to put something on the moon to
It was a giant waste
combat.
of money.
Not really, because the Soviet Union fell. So obviously it wasn't that big of a waste of money.
It still shouldn't have been done.
Well,
Should have let them waste money on
well,
their own.
we'll get to it. The decoration was ambitious, as it was audacious. NASA had less than a decade to figure out how to do something no one had ever done before.
Less than a decade.
Less than a decade. 8 years, to be exact. NASA's Apollo program was born out of Kennedy's vision. The program faced numerous challenges from the start: technological, logistical, and even psychological. The Apollo missions were building on previous programs like Mercury and Gemini, which had tested the boundaries of human spaceflight, but nothing had prepared them for the enormity of landing on the moon. Before we get to Apollo 11, let's touch on Apollo 1. It was a tragedy that almost derailed the entire space program. In 1967, during a routine test on the launch pad, a cabin fire broke out in the Apollo 1 command module, killing all 3 astronauts on board.
Do they have names?
Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger B. Chaffee. It was a devastating setback. The fire exposed serious flaws in the spacecraft's design and highlighted the dangers of space exploration. NASA, however, persevered.
Of course.
They conducted an exhaustive investigation and overhauled the design of the Apollo spacecraft. Apollo 7 through Apollo 10 tested everything from orbital docking to lunar module operations, paving the way for the historic Apollo 11 mission.
Any more lives lost in between all those?
No, I think that was like their biggest down. I guess, I don't know. I think there was like animals lost during the Mercury and Gemini and some of the Apollo missions. Also, but they don't mention that because they're not human. But let's talk about the crew. Legends in the right of they were the the first to walk on the moon. According to Trey, they never did. Do you believe that no one's ever been on the moon?
No, just the broadcast was faked.
Okay. First up, Neil Armstrong. Armstrong was a test pilot before joining NASA. Calm, calculated, and precise, Armstrong had the right temperament for the job. In fact, he was known for his coolness under pressure, which would serve him well on this mission. Then there was Buzz Aldrin. Aldrin had a doctorate in astronautics from MIT and was an expert at orbital mechanics. How do you become an expert at that?
And something that isn't there yet?
Yeah, it's barely there.
Just saying.
He was the second man on the moon and had earned the nickname Dr. Rendezvous
Why?
for his work on the spacecraft's docking techniques, which were critical for the lunar missions. So I guess rendezvous is like when you come back up to the ship.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So like they called him Dr. Rendezvous because he was a doctor and he knew how to rendezvous. Finally, there was Michael Collins. While Armstrong and Aldrin were destined for the moon's surface, Collins had a different but no less important role.
Obviously, I've never heard of Michael Collins before.
He would remain in lunar orbit aboard the command module, ensuring that he could safely return to Earth. Collins described his role as lonely, but was crucial to the success of the mission.
They drew straws and he lost.
Yeah, that sucks. Can you imagine? Because no one knows who Michael Collins is.
I definitely didn't.
Yeah, who was the first people on the moon? Buzz Aldrin and Neil Armstrong, and they're like, "Oh, there was a third man on that mission," and I'm like, "Was
Well,
there?"
technically, he didn't go to the moon, so
He didn't, but it's right. His mission was vital. Like without him, they just would have been stuck on that moon.
that would have been a better story.
It would have. The trio was selected from a pool of some of the most experienced astronauts in NASA's history.
Experienced astronauts.
Yeah, they've been to space. They just haven't been to the moon. I think you're being a little bit too harsh. They trained rigorously for months, practicing lunar landings, docking maneuvers, and emergency procedures over and over again. The launch. July 16th, 1969.
One of the most scariest things is the launch.
Yep. I know from personal experience. Finally, the day arrived, July 16th, 1969. At 9:32 a.m. Eastern Time, Apollo 11 lifted off from Kennedy Space Center in Florida atop a Saturn V rocket, the most powerful rocket ever built at the time. It pales in comparison to the rockets that we have now.
Obviously, because our technology is better now.
Yep. The Saturn V was a behemoth, standing at 363 feet tall. It weighed over 6 million pounds when fully fueled. It generated 7.5 million pounds of thrust, enough to send the Apollo spacecraft hurtling into space.
That was the plan anyway.
Yeah. Millions of people around the world watched the launch on the television.
Which is amazing. A television that had maybe 3 channels.
Yeah, and all 3 channels was a space launch.
Yes. I understand the space launch.
Yeah. Okay. Calm down. We'll get to that. We have to get the history out of the way and the thing. And
Most
then
people
we'll
know
talk
the
about-
history.
I'm reminding them. Some people don't.
Who?
Kids listen to our shit.
Oh, that's true. Children.
Yeah. The children.
My dad remembers watching the space launch with his parents.
Yeah. So is my mom.
But he left before the moon part because he was 3. So
How does he remember that? Though? You usually don't have any memories until
it's probably not like an actual memory. His mom probably talked about it.
Oh, okay.
But he remembers sitting there with her and his dad during the launch.
Okay.
But he didn't get to see the actual landing on the moon walking thing.
My mom was 12.
Did you ask her?
About the moon landing and
Yeah.
stuff? Yeah.
Does she remember watching it?
Yeah, she watched it.
No, there was only 3 channels. So
Yeah.
if she wanted to watch TV, she had no choice.
Yeah. But those on the ground could feel it. The earth-shaking roar of the engines, the plume of smoke rising into the sky as the rocket ascended. It was a flawless launch. After about 12 minutes, the astronauts were in Earth orbit, where they spent a few hours checking their systems before the command to fire their engines for the translunar injection. The burn would send them on a 3-day journey to the moon, which I would have thought it would take a lot longer.
Not only that, but firstly, that's a very long televised thing.
They didn't televise that.
They didn't televise all of it, just
Nope, just
the launch and then the landing.
yeah,
Okay.
and the moon. Traveling to the moon took 76 hours over 3 days, during which the astronauts experienced something no human had ever seen with their own eyes before: the Earth as a distant blue and white marble hanging in the blackness of space.
Well, that's not true. If other people have been into space.
Yeah, but they would have seen the giant Earth. They were going away from it, so it would get smaller and smaller and smaller. The astronauts spent much of their time during the journey monitoring the spacecraft systems, running navigation checks, and preparing for the lunar landing. The command module, Columbia, was where the astronauts lived, and the lunar module, Eagle, was tucked underneath, waiting for its moment. On July 19th, the Apollo 11 spacecraft entered lunar orbit. It was a nerve-wracking moment. On one miscalculation, and the spacecraft would miss the moon or crash into it. But the burn was perfect, and they were in orbit. Sorry, if you hear flapping in the back, it's we're outside. The landing, July 20th, 1969. July 20th, 1969 will forever be remembered as the day humans first set foot on another world. You know, I didn't know the date. I just knew it was in 69. I didn't know the exact date. So obviously it doesn't live in that much of our memory. Armstrong and Aldrin boarded the Eagle and began their descent. Michael Collins remained in the lunar orbit aboard Columbia. The descent to the lunar surface was tense. Armstrong had to take manual control of the lander after realizing the automated system was guiding them toward a dangerous, boulder-strewn area. Even AI fails them then. With fuel running low, just about 30 seconds left, Armstrong found a flat area to set Eagle down at 4:18 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Armstrong's voice crackled over the radio. Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. Yeah. Didn't give you chills right there?
No.
Okay. The world held its breath as Armstrong prepped to descend the ladder. Finally, at 10:56 p.m. Eastern Time, Neil Armstrong stepped
Why did it
onto
take
the
him so
moon's
long?
surface.
They got there at 4.
What?
They landed at 4.
Yeah.
And it took him until 10 to get out?
They have to do stuff.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. They have to check all their systems. They have to make sure it takes a long time for them to put that spacesuit on.
Not anymore.
Well, yeah, this is the first time they actually had to put a spacesuit on and make sure it's all airtight before they step out on the moon and combust.
Just saying.
Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon's surface, uttering the famous words. Do you know them?
Something about small step for something and a big step for something else.
Yeah, there's one small step for a man, depending on what source you look at. One giant leap for mankind. Buzz Aldrin joined him shortly after, and the two astronauts spent about 2.5 hours on the surface, conducting experiments, collecting samples, and, of course, planting the American flag.
That waves.
No, it doesn't wave. It's stiff.
It went.
No, there's no. Yeah, you can flip it out. Okay. So the gravity on the moon is much less than Earth. Mm-hmm. There's no atmosphere for it to blow, but you can throw it up and kind of wiggle it, and it will stay like that for a while. Depending on how hard you do it. If you throw a baseball in space at 90 miles an hour, it will continue to go 90 miles an hour until it hits something because there is nothing to slow it down. There's no friction in space. So if you flickered it out like that, and it's waving, it would continue to wave forever. I don't know if that's true. I think it's just an optical illusion. I think they just made it stiff. Or it could have been done in the studio. I don't know. After spending 21 hours on the lunar surface, Armstrong and Aldrin returned to the Eagle, which then lifted off and joined Collins in lunar orbit. The three astronauts then made their journey back to Earth, re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down in the Pacific Ocean on July 24th, 1969.
Excuse me.
Where they were recovered by the USS Hornet. The entire mission had taken 8 days, but its impact would last a lifetime. So, the legacy of Apollo 11 was more than just a scientific mission. It was a defining moment for humanity In that moment, the barriers between nations, races, and ideologies seemed to fade. For the first time in human history, people from all walks of life, from every corner of the globe, shared an achievement of landing on the moon. The success of Apollo 11 wasn't just about technological innovation. It was about the unyielding human spirit, the belief that we can reach beyond the stars. In total, NASA would send 6 more Apollo missions to the moon, with Apollo 17 in 1972 making the last manned lunar landing, but it was Apollo 11 that cemented its place in history. We haven't been to the moon since Apollo 17 in 1972. Why?
That's 52 years.
Why haven't we been to the moon in 52 years?
There's no interest.
Okay, well, let's talk about why it could be fake. Despite overwhelming evidence that the United States did indeed send men to the moon during the Apollo 11 mission, a significant number of people around the world still believe that the entire event was staged by NASA in an elaborate hoax. In fact, some estimates suggest that around 6% of Americans believe that the moon landing never happened. So, what's the truth? Is there any merit to these claims, or is it just another wild conspiracy theory with no basis in reality? Let's dig into the details and try to separate fact from fiction.
Well, honestly, I think that it's just another conspiracy with no actual, like, there's no fact in it. It's just a conspiracy.
Are you changing your answer right now?
No. I still think that the broadcast was fake.
So you think they really landed on the moon? They just were unable to film it and broadcast it from the moon?
Yeah, I think that's silly.
Okay. Why? You don't think that the waves or whatever could have been sent from that far away?
In a place where there's 3 TV channels, no.
I think there was more than 3. Look that up before you start spreading misinformation.
It's not even like misinformation. It'd be exaggeration, if anything.
Okay. Well, so you want to talk about the origins of this conspiracy? Yay, nah. Okay, I'm going to anyways. The origins of the conspiracy. To understand where this conspiracy theory comes from, we have to go back to the late 1960s and early 1970s, the height of the Cold War. It was that time of deep distrust in the government, especially in the United States, with events like the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal eroding public confidence in national institutions.
In 1970, United States TVs only had access to 3 channels.
Okay, what about 1969?
ABC. It's 1970. You think they have more in the 60s?
I don't know. I just think that you couldn't narrow it down to that year.
In the mid 1970s, there was 5.
And now, do you know how many channels we have?
So many.
Yes, so many.
Too many.
Yeah.
But
And nothing's ever on.
ABC, CBS, and NBC. That was it.
Okay.
And how did everyone around the world watch it?
What? They had their
That's
own
what I'm
stuff.
saying.
So,
Like,
okay, whatever. Anyways, they had satellites back then. The moon landing conspiracy.
Russia had a satellite.
Yeah, the moon landing conspiracy theory first started gaining traction in the early 1970s, largely fueled by a single book, We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 Billion Swindle, written by Bill Kaysing and published in 1976.
Is he dead?
I imagine so. He was pretty old when he wrote the book. Kaysing was a former technical writer for a NASA contractor, but he had no direct involvement with the Apollo program.
Allegedly.
Nevertheless, he claimed that NASA lacked the technology to safely send
That's what I'm saying.
humans to the moon and argued that the moon landing was staged as a part of a government cover-up. My
It's not
thing is if it was, say that the broadcast was faked, there is no way that they could keep that a secret for this long. There's no way. Someone would have a deathbed confession.
Nobody would believe it. Nobody.
The conspiracy theories would, and
Yeah,
it would
and
be
we'd be like, oh my God,
documented.
yes, we're right. But that's not enough. It's the same thing if Jesus came back now for release. Nobody would believe him,
Yeah.
except for the Christian people, and even them.
No,
Even them.
because he wouldn't be white. He wouldn't look like the paintings of him.
The point is still the same. If the truth comes out, nobody's going to really care. Nobody's going to really
I
believe
know.
it.
We just
It's the
found
same
out
thing
there's
as
aliens are
JFK.
real.
Same thing with JFK. Nobody's really going to care.
I don't know.
And whatever the truth is, if it comes out, they're going to be like, well, that's not true. That's like, seriously, if it was just,
Yeah. Casing's ideas, despite their lack of scientific backing, resonated with many who were already skeptical of the U.S. government.
well, there's no reason to not be skeptical of the U.S. government.
Yeah, this was the time of like the Vietnam War.
Now is the
and
time.
stuff. Yeah, I know.
I'm just saying that there's no real reason to put 100% faith in the government. So believing because the government said so.
Well, it was a big contrast from the 1940s when we were in World War II. Everybody believed
Yeah, I
that the
get
government
that.
was doing something. And then the 50s, the Korean War happened. And we're like,
This is bullshit.
okay. Well, it wasn't as bad as the Vietnam War. It wasn't
No, but
as
they
dense.
still didn't want to be there.
Yeah. And then, well, that was the small soldiers. The Vietnam War was televised.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. But they televised from Vietnam, so they couldn't televise from the moon.
The moon is completely different location than somewhere that's on Earth.
Yeah. But the distance, I mean, it takes 3 days to get to the moon. It takes, I mean, if you walked to Vietnam, it'd probably be a long time, too. Or if you flew to Vietnam, it's like, what, takes 12 hours?
It's on Earth.
Okay,
That is
anyways.
different.
Whatever. Anyways, from that point on, the moon landing conspiracy theory began to spread, evolving over the decades with the advent of the internet and social media. Mm-hmm. But what exactly do these conspiracy theorists claim? Let's break down their main arguments.
Okay. Well,
And your main argument is
I would say
they
mine is
were not-
completely different.
Yeah, your main argument is
the broadcast was fake.
broadcasting was fake. The photographic evidence.
Oh my God, because those can't be faked.
Perhaps the most commonly cited argument by the moon landing deniers revolves around the photographic and video footage taken on the moon's surface. So this goes along. This is why you think it's fake. Conspiracy theorists claim that many of the photos show inconsistencies that suggest that they were taken on a soundstage on Earth. Let's go through the few of the most popular examples. First, there's the famous waving flag,
Yeah, I was
which
gonna
you
say.
admitted.
I-
Argument.
All I was saying is that it was waving.
Yeah. In the footage of the astronauts planting the American flag on the moon, the flag appears to flutter as though it's being blown by the wind. But how could this be possible on the moon? There's no atmosphere, therefore, no wind. Well, it turns out the flag wasn't actually fluttering at all. The flag used during the Apollo missions had a horizontal rod along the top to keep it extended, as a regular flag would just hang limp on the moon's low gravity. The fluttering effect occurred because the astronauts were twisting the flagpole into the lunar Earth, causing the fabric to ripple momentarily. With no air to slow the movement, the ripples lasted longer than they would have on Earth.
Keep going.
Oh, I was like, I thought you were
I
gonna
have a
argue with
whole
it.
argument
Okay.
against all of the proven things. So
Okay.
you can go ahead.
Okay. Another common point of skepticism is the lack of stars in the photos.
Oh, I never paid attention to
If the
stars.
astronauts were standing on the moon, shouldn't we see stars in the sky? Conspiracy theorists claim that the absence of proof is proof that the photos were taken in a studio.
No, because even in a studio, they would have added stars.
Yeah.
I mean, that would have been more
Yeah, that
for
would've been-
me,
yeah.
like, you know, to be like, okay, they're definitely faking it because they're stars.
Here's the scientific explanation of why there was no stars. The cameras used in the Apollo astronauts were set to short exposure times to capture the bright lunar surface, and the astronauts were in their white spacesuits. The moon's surface is highly reflective, and the sunlight, therefore, very intense. As a result, the dim light of distant stars simply couldn't show up in the photographs. It's the same reason why if you take a photo during the day here on Earth, you can't see the stars in the sky either. So we have the moon. So okay, at night, the reason we see stars is because it's dark outside, right? The sun isn't shining directly on us. When you're on the moon, there is no atmosphere to block the sun. There is no dark side of the moon.
But
it's all light.
They said that there was stars and they could see the stars, but because of the exposure on the camera and how bright the moon itself is, plus their white stuff, you couldn't see the stars because the stars weren't as bright as everything else.
Well, I
so
believe
therefore the
Neil
stars were
deGrasse
still there.
Tyson when he says it's just too bright to see stars out there because their sun is shining all the time. It doesn't like go to sleep or anything. Unless you're in the shadow of something like the Earth.
I'm just saying
or the moon,
that the stars are still there. But I agree. Well, I disagree, really. But if they would have put stars in the broadcast, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it would have been more
I would have been like, no, that's... But then again, it's 2024.
Yeah, I mean...
So I know different than they would have in the 70s.
Yeah. The shadows and lighting. Another argument you'll often hear is about the shadows seen in the moon landings photos. Skeptics point out that the shadows appear to go in different directions, as though multiple light sources were used, which they say suggests the scene was lit artificially. In reality, though, the strange shadows can be explained by the uneven surface of the moon. The lunar terrain was full of small hills, rocks, and craters, which caused shadows to fall in odd directions. Additionally, the light from the sun can scatter over the moon's reflective surface, further complicating how shadows appear. There is no need for artificial lighting. Sunlight was the only light source on the moon. Do you have any more arguments, or do you have any arguments, or do you just want me to read all of them?
Read all of them.
Okay.
Because I only have one argument that just counters all of it.
Okay. I swear to, if it's about the technology. Okay, so the technology argument. This is another one of yours. Another major claim from the moonlander deniers is that NASA simply did not have the technology to safely land humans on the moon in 1969.
In 8 years?
Especially given the state of the computing at the time. They argue that NASA was under immense pressure to win the space race against the Soviet Union, and the faking of a moon landing was easier option than actually pulling it off.
Yeah, it's also less dangerous to the astronauts. They already killed 3 and numerous animals.
While it's true that the computers aboard the Apollo spacecraft were primitive by today's standard, less powerful than even a modern smartphone, this overlooks the fact that NASA's success was due to the combination of careful planning, engineering brilliance, and rigorous testing. What?
How does that work?
How does what work?
Rigorous testing.
Yeah.
That is what combats the fact that my smartphone is stronger than the intelligence was back then. The technology was so bad that my smartphone is now better.
So our smartphones right now have more computing power and more power in them than all of the computers that were used in NASA. Yeah.
So testing and planning.
Yes, and engineering. Engineering is the backbone of our country.
Engineering does nothing if my smartphone is better than the technology.
Think the smartphones got so much better is because of
we didn't do smartphones in 8 years.
We did smartphones pretty fast.
We did not do them in 8 years.
So the cell phones that we used to have, hold on.
The point is still the same. Technology was not debunked.
Cell phones didn't come around until after the government was done with them. The R&D from the government is what created cell phones.
That is still really irrelevant to the situation.
GPS that everybody has, created by the Navy.
It doesn't matter. The point does not uphold the fact that our smartphones in the today's world that we can hold in our hands was stronger than NASA's computers in 1969.
Yes, but
there's no but.
How long has it been? How long has it been since that has happened?
How long has it been?
Yes.
It doesn't matter.
All
of that doesn't matter.
The fact when was the first
stays
smartphone?
The same.
When was the first smartphone?
The fact stays the same.
When was the first smartphone?
Our phones now are stronger and better than NASA's computers
They're not better now than NASA's computers. There's a difference.
No, there's no difference.
The TVs were a lot better now than they were back then. The cars
Again,
were a lot
wasn't
better.
done in 8 years.
Yes.
None of it was done in 8 years. But NASA could do it in 8 years
Now-
with
Not
my
with
smartphone.
computers, with engineering.
Engineering. Technology is needed for engineering.
No, it's not. How is it? How?
You need technology to make advancements.
They didn't have running. Ancient Romans had indoor plumbing. And after they died out, indoor plumbing didn't come around until like the late 1800s.
Okay. What's the point of that? What point are you trying to make?
You don't get that? The ancient Romans had indoor plumbing,
Okay.
running water in their house.
Okay.
That did not happen again until way later. The
So-
Egyptians built the pyramids 6,000 years ago.
Are you trying to say?
And we can't figure out how they did it. We can't figure out how they built the pyramids.
That's not an argument for. That'd be an argument against.
No, I'm just saying.
We're still not smart
Stuff-
enough to figure things out.
No. The saying different time periods had different smart people. They worked
They can
around
be
the issue. They worked around the issue.
The
We have
point is-
technology
the point
now
is the
that
same.
could probably build the pyramids better than they could.
Why haven't we been back
just
to the
couldn't
moon?
like that? What's out there? There's nothing out there.
That's not the point. The point is,
We're
if they
trying
could do
for
it in the
Mars now.
60s,
We're trying it for Mars now. Why go to the moon? There's nothing on the moon.
they can still go to the moon to be like, listen, moon deniers, we
Why?
can do it.
Why would they do that?
Why are they trying so hard to prove that the first moon landing happened?
Why would they
Because
do
they were
that
in
at
a
all?
race.
Okay, anyways. They argue that NASA was under immense pressure to win
Mm-hmm.
the space race against the Soviet Union, and faking the moon landing would be easier than pulling it off, right?
No,
They would have.
just the
It
broadcast.
would have been easier.
Just the broadcast.
Okay.
The broadcast, since apparently everyone in the whole entire world could see it because everyone was all united and their whole, like, humans can do this bullshit.
No, it was
Whatever.
America flexing.
Whatever. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Russia would see that they'd done it.
Okay, I'm going to talk about
Allegedly.
the computer. I'm going to talk about the computer. Hold on.
What computer?
The Apollo guidance computer, the AGC. Just listen. You said I was going to read it, and then you were going to debunk
You're the one
everything.
that thought that the technology thing was debunked. It just doesn't make any sense to me to be debunked.
For example, it was a marvel for its time.
Yes.
Though simple by today's standards, it was designed to do exactly what it needed to do, guide the spacecraft to the moon and back. And don't forget, the astronauts themselves were highly trained and capable of a manual control if necessary.
Yeah, okay.
Neil Armstrong famously had to take manual control of the lunar module during the landing.
I thought it was Buzz.
No,
Are you sure?
I'm sure. Guiding it safely to the surface when onboard computer was heading towards the hazardous area. So, obviously, yes, the computers were super powerful for their time. Obviously, they're primitive compared to what we have now. But, again, that's to be expected. But he had to take manual control. The computers weren't smart enough to land him safely on the moon, so he had to take manual control, which, again, is human ingenuity and engineering.
I don't see engineering in that.
You don't... Okay, whatever. It's also important to remember that the United States didn't just send one mission to the moon. Between 1969 and 1972, NASA conducted 6 successful moon landings as a part of the Apollo program, and each mission involved hundreds of thousands of people, from engineers to scientists, to contractors. Faking all of that would have been an astronomical feat in itself.
I don't think that they did all that. I don't think all of it was faked. Just the broadcast.
Okay. I'm just saying the conspiracy that states right now it's fake and everything's fake. You just believe that the broadcast is fake. The radiation argument. The Van Allen belts. Another common argument involves the Van Allen radiation belts. These are regions of intense radiation that surround the Earth, and conspiracy theorists argue that the Apollo astronauts would have been fried by the radiation while passing through them.
I didn't even know about this.
I didn't either. But here's the thing. NASA was well aware of the Van Allen belts, and they carefully calculated the trajectory and the spacecraft to minimize the time spent in the most dangerous parts. The astronauts were only exposed to a low dose of radiation, well within the safe limits. The spacecraft itself provided some shielding. In fact, the exposure the astronauts faced was similar to what a person would get during a medical x-ray. I didn't know about the radiation. I mean, I knew space had radiation, but I didn't know that was like a Van Allen belt. I didn't even know they named it. Like, it was just a belt of radiation. And they're like, who discovered that? Van Allen. So why would NASA fake the moon landing? So if the moon landing was fake, what would be the motive behind it? Most conspiracy theorists point to these key reasons. First, there's an idea that the United States government was desperate to beat the Soviet Union in the space race. After the Soviet Union's success with Sputnik and sending its first man into space, Yuri Gagarin, the U.S. was determined to one-up their Cold War rival. Faking a moon landing would have been a way to assert dominance without the risk and expense of actually going to the moon. Second, the financial motive. The Apollo program cost about billion with a B, dollars, a staggering amount at the time. That's like a lot of money right now. Conspiracy theorists suggest that NASA could have faked the moon landing and pocketed much of that money. I'm telling you now, the government would not allow that. They would not allow $25 billion to go into a program. They fake it and they keep most of the money. The government would not allow that at all. That's $25 billion. So this is say the Avengers movies was around $200 million to make, right? With the CGI and everything like that. So if they did offer Stanley Kubrick to fake the moon landing, right? And they paid him, just to say an equivalent of the $200 million, that's still $24,800,000,000 that they could distribute it between each other. And only the higher ups got that money. So why isn't Von Braun family freaking billionaires? They're not. They're rich, but they're not billionaires. I think he changed his name, by the way. I don't know. Maybe. I would. And third, there's an argument that fake the moon landing would boost American morale at the time when the country was struggling with the Vietnam War, civil rights protests, and other social upheavals. So the next section is debunking the conspiracy. So if you want to try to convince me otherwise why you think everything is fake, or at least the broadcast, it's your time to shine. Go ahead.
The only thing that is proving, right, debunking the conspiracies
Yeah.
is what?
I have a whole section of debunking. So I read all the conspiracy theories. You're supposed to argue.
But
with the
who
conspiracy.
debunks the conspiracy theories?
What?
Who debunks them?
Scientists and people who actually go to school.
Scientists that work with...
No, most of them are private. They don't all work for the government. That's a
It's
common
not
misconception.
just the government.
That's a common misconception.
Who's going to go against what?
Many people do.
Not scientists.
There's many scientists that don't believe it. They believe that human civilization started 10,000 years ago, and there's evidence that it started way before that. So, and there's some scientists that know this, and there's other scientists that call them that are gatekeepers.
Gatekeepers.
So, yeah.
The
So,
point
like
is
I
that
said, there's scientists that don't believe in stuff that do believe in other things. There's flat
So-
Earth scientists. There's flat Earth scientists, and there's round Earth scientists. There's hollow Earth scientists. Scientists do not agree with each other, and they spend a lot of time arguing who's right.
They're all in unison about the moon landing?
No, there's conspiracy theorists, scientists too, as well. Mm-hmm. There is.
I'm just saying.
Do you want me to name them? Because I can, but I mean, I know they're out there.
You can name them.
No, I can't name them. I said I can't name them, but I'm sure they're out there. There's scientists that believe in weird shit.
Did you
There's
know?
Bigfoot scientists.
Did you know that
Bigfoot's real.
Apollo 10 was broadcast live too?
Okay. Do you think they faked that one too? Wait, how many years had passed between 10 and 11?
Well, 10 came before 11.
Yeah, no shit.
But they...
How many years had passed?
I need you to listen for a second.
Okay.
They broadcasted images.
Okay. From the moon? Because they didn't land on the moon?
No. Of the spacecraft traveling
Okay.
to the moon.
Okay. But 10 never went to the moon.
I don't know what you're trying to say here. I'm telling you specifically, 10 was broadcast live, right? But it was images. It was not actual video.
Okay.
11 was broadcast live, but it wasn't images. It was
how many
video.
Years had
I
passed?
don't know right now, because all I wanted to know is if other moon landings were televised.
Okay, yes, there were.
Yes, and I'm telling you. And then 12 was broadcast from the moon. And it was the first color TV. And that was November 1969.
Okay. 1969, November. So they sent another one up there in what, 3 months? Mm-hmm. Yeah, color TV was around.
Yes, I know it was.
Okay.
That's not the point.
Hold on.
They sent 6 crewed moon landing missions. The last being December 1972.
Oh, wow. No years had passed. It was literally May and then July.
And then again in November.
Yeah, Apollo 10 was essentially served as a dress rehearsal for the moon landing. So they were just airing out details. Maybe they did images and then they realized they could probably do video. So far, you're not convincing me that
I'm not trying to convince you because I believe what I believe.
Okay, well, you're not convincing the audience either.
The audience most than likely doesn't believe in the conspiracy theory to begin with. Not very many people do.
Some of them do.
Of course, some of them do. And children, I'm not trying to convince of anything.
Yeah. Anyways, keep going with your...
I already told you what I thought.
Okay.
Scientists are corrupt. They all suck. Every single one of them. Every single one of them.
Okay.
And science is just best guess.
Until it's proven.
Which
Scientific
is
theory.
never proven. Fully.
Yes, it is.
There's not very many stuff that's proven fully. 100%. Proven 100%, which means there's nobody that disagrees with it.
I can throw Apple on the air and
You're not a scientist.
100 times of 100 times,
You're not-
it's going to come down.
You're not a scientist.
That is gravity proven itself.
If there's one scientist that goes against
What do you think makes a scientist? What do you think, personally, believe, what makes you a scientist?
I don't know, I guess school.
No. What makes you a scientist is you coming up with a theory, proving your theory within scientific processes.
Which you would have to do school for.
No.
Anybody can be a scientist.
Anybody can be a scientist. Yeah, you have an idea. Isaac Newton wasn't a scientist.
He is now.
He had a theory that he proved. He didn't go to school to be a scientist.
Nobody goes to school back then to be a scientist.
Yeah. Galileo.
Galileo.
Leonardo da Vinci.
Leonardo da Vinci wasn't a scientist. He was a painter.
He was an inventor as well.
Not a scientist.
And yes, but he had theories that he proved
Okay,
with scientific
theories
theory.
are completely
But
irrelevant.
anyways, that's the whole point of scientists.
No,
They take a
science
theory-
needs to be proved. In order to prove it, you have to be 100% across the
Yes,
board.
and gravity-
All scientists.
gravity-
If there's one scientist that goes against it, that means it's not fully proven.
Okay.
I'm not
What
saying that
scientist
science
is
or
going
that
against gravity.
Gravity doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
But the point is, science is never 100%. It never is.
Well, it's 100% on gravity because anybody who doesn't believe in gravity go up on top of your roof and jump on. Please don't. I don't want to be sued. But I'm just saying.
Or if you do and you live, don't tell them we said that.
Yeah. Like I said, gravity 100% exists.
No, you can't. Well,
and it's proven.
it exists.
Gravity
and
is
it is
real.
proven. But the point is, someone that's a scientist is going to be against it. It's the same thing like you just said. There's flat earthers that are scientists.
Yes, but
There's no yes buts.
so you believe that
I mean,
we cannot
Earth looks kind of flat from space to me.
It doesn't. It's a sphere.
It
But
does. It looks
like
round.
a ball. Well, if you think that the Earth landing was faked, the
No,
broadcast,
the moon
sorry,
landing.
the broadcasting.
I
moon
believe we live
landing-
on Earth.
Okay. Anyways, you believe all that is
just
fake?
the
Did I say
broadcast.
the Earth landing?
Yes.
Okay. Anyways,
Just the
moon
broadcast.
landing.
Just the broadcast.
Just the broadcast,
We
okay.
went.
So
To
you
the
don't
moon.
think that video can be passed from the moon to
I just
here?
thought it was freaking weird, and we were in a race, and
I like
the
how,
best way to be like, "Hey, we made it
Do you believe that there's people in the space station, International Space Station?
now." Do I believe that they're there now? Yes, I believe that they're now.
Okay.
I believe that they're now
But you
because now NASA's computers are a lot smarter than my iPhone.
most.
I mean, my
NASA's not
Samsung.
even sending rockets up in space anymore. Do you
It's
know who
because
is?
there is no interest.
Elon Musk
Elon Musk.
is sending
Elon
rockets.
Musk needs to go the other way and go find the aliens in the ocean.
I don't want to find the aliens in the ocean because there's no
I want-
fucking aliens in the ocean.
I want to find the
there
aliens in
is
the ocean.
no aliens in the ocean.
I want him to explore the ocean. If you want to get my attention, Mr. Elon Musk and your 800 kids, explore the ocean.
Well, he can. I don't think he has that many kids,
Obviously. It's an exaggeration.
but it's hyperbole. But back to the moon. Anyways, you think that they actually landed? Neil Armstrong
yes.
and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. You believe that?
I believe they were on the moon, yes.
Yeah.
I just don't think it was televised.
You don't think it was televised? Would it have been so bad if they had done that? Do
No.
you think it would have been bad for them to go up to the moon, spend the time that they said they went there, but pre-filmed it?
Would it upset me?
Yeah, would
No.
it upset you? Would you feel like you were lied to,
No.
and would you distrust the government even more?
I don't trust the government to begin with. There's nothing they could do to make me fix that.
Distrust even
I
more.
distrust them no matter what. There is nothing they can do that'll make me be like, oh my God, I trust my government.
I mean, they haven't killed us yet.
That doesn't mean anything.
Actually,
that's
there's a lot of programs where they've killed
that's
us.
bare minimum, really.
Well, yeah, it's we'll get into some nice government government programs where they
Sketchy.
used us as guinea pigs and killed us and shit. But anyways, the moon landing.
No, if they came out and said, look, we pre-filmed it, but we did go, I'm not going to be like, oh my God, you lying bastards. No. Because I would get why they did it, why they pre-filmed it, do all this other shit, because they were in a space race. They had to get there before Russia. And Russia already beat us in the first place by putting someone in the moon. I mean, in space.
Yeah,
Russia put someone in space before anybody else did.
Yuri. They put a dog too in space before. That dog died. Any animal we sent to space is dead.
It's so depressing.
Just like that SNL sketch where they send the monkey to the moon, the chimp or whatever, and they're like, he's trying to say something, and it was like, help, 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 ow, it hurts, and they're like, turn it down. It was a funny sketch, but anyways. So now that you've stated your conspiracy theory or your belief that the broadcast was fake, let's talk about debunking the conspiracy. So let's take a moment to debunk the idea that faking the moon landing would have even been feasible.
Of course it's been feasible.
First off, the sheer number of people involved in the Apollo program makes it highly unlikely that such a large-scale hoax could have been kept secret for over 50 years.
Okay.
Hold on.
That's true, but not if it was what we talked about.
Yeah,
If
if
it
they
was
went to the moon and then
Like if they,
it was filmed later. Gotcha.
yeah, that would
Or
have been,
pre-filmed.
everyone could have lived with that.
An estimated 400,000 people worked on Apollo missions, including engineers, scientists, contractors, and astronauts. So just all these people were compliant in a cover-up.
It's not that they were compliant and cover up.
not
They did not
one
know that it was a cover up.
Single one of them would ever come
They
forward
did
with
not
evidence
know.
is highly improbable.
You really think that everybody would have that
The
kind of
astronauts
information?
would've.
The astronauts would have too. That's 3 people.
Stanley Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick
was-
also. He never really fully denied having.
Yeah, but why? I wouldn't deny it either.
I wouldn't either.
I'd be like, oh my god, I'm so famous.
Yeah, well, he was famous anyway.
And that, and he had Space Odyssey 2001, and that really promoted his movie, which came out in the 70s.
Just saying.
Secondly, there's the issue of independent verification. The Soviet Union was tracking NASA's every move during the space race. They had the technology to monitor the Apollo spacecraft and would have known if the U.S. hadn't even sent them into the moon. I'm debunking the conspiracy that we never went to the moon, not that the broadcast was fake. And yet the Soviets never disputed the moon landing. In fact, they congratulated NASA on its success, which is kind of weird. Congratulations, NASA.
Good job, guys. You made it.
Good job.
They wouldn't have done that.
Shit. They're like,
Bullshit.
joke's on you. We've already been to the moon. There's nukes on there pointed at you. Finally, there's the physical evidence. The Apollo astronauts left behind a number of objects on the moon, including scientific instruments like retroreflectors, which still function to this day. The reflectors are used to measure the distance between the Earth and the moon with laser beams. If the moon landing had been faked, these instruments wouldn't exist, which is why we know that either the moon's getting farther away or getting closer. I can't remember which one. But every year it inches either closer or further away. I can't remember which one it is. But that's pretty crazy. Like, either it's going to crash into us or it's going to float out into space. And don't forget the moon rocks. The Apollo missions brought back over 800 pounds of lunar material, which have been studied by scientists all over the world. These rocks, unique properties that can't be found on Earth, further confirming their extraterrestrial origin. We didn't have asteroids and meteors hit. Like we have 800 pounds of this. I'm like, yeah, we just had a freaking asteroid hit the Earth, or meteor or whatever, comet, I don't know what hits the Earth. Hit the Earth that was the size of a fucking school bus. Like, of course we're going to have 800 pounds of extraterrestrial material. So, was the moon landing faked? The overwhelming consensus from scientists, engineers, and historians is a resounding no. The evidence supporting the Apollo 11 mission is vast and well documented with the technological use and the physical samples. That being said, there has been no evidence to point whether the broadcast was faked or not. So, I get what you're saying. And it is possible that they pre-filmed it, but how would they know how to react on the moon?
They've been training.
Yes, but they don't know the effects on the moon.
And we didn't see it, so it doesn't matter.
If they would have broadcast it from the moon, right, they would have had weightlessness. Not weightlessness, near weightlessness. You can't, like, it has some gravity. It's not no gravity. But there is no way we could have predicted what it felt like. Because if we would have been like, oh, it's like space, we've been into outer space, we know there's no gravity in space, so we could jump up and down and be weightless and stuff.
Like you said, scientists.
Yes, but they wouldn't have known that it had gravity.
They don't have to know. And us on Earth in 1969, we don't know no better. We don't give two shits.
We knew enough about the universe to know that when we're being bamboozled, people are
Obviously
smarter
not.
than you think. Especially in 1969, people were smarter than you think.
If you believe that, then the conspiracy would have been a lot more wide range than it is.
Yes, but there's been people who are like, oh, I can see that and stuff. For one, I don't understand why we care so much. Why do we care if we've been to the moon or not?
I already asked that.
Yeah, I agree with you. Why do we care whether we've been to the moon, where we've even been to outer space? Why do we care? Like, there's nothing out there that we could... There's no life forms out there within our reach.
That's because they're in our ocean.
We don't have aliens in the ocean.
You can't say that. The government's come forward and said so.
Okay.
Everyone knows that
With
government
no
never lies.
video or picture or audio evidence. There's been no evidence besides the people who were talking in the
That were
Congress that were former employees of NASA, former
Government
fighter pilots and
somebodies.
stuff, which I believe they saw what they saw. I believe that they saw what they saw. I just don't believe it was alien spacecraft. I think it was government shit. They were testing
Same thing.
all of the UFOs that they've seen in the 50s and 60s and stuff turned out to be the bombers, the stealth bombers.
That's not
and
always
stuff.
true.
It's 100% true.
It is not 100% true.
it
You
is.
cannot say 100%. Firstly, you are not a scientist.
I am a scientist. I did a science project. Boom.
In fifth
Scientist.
grade.
Okay. No, I did more in fifth grade. I did it in middle school and high school. Thank you.
Nobody does science anything in,
I didn't
in
say
high
fair.
school.
I said project. I did science projects all through my life.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
No, you didn't.
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 I did my son's science project.
That doesn't count.
I'm a
And
scientist.
okay, I did my son's science fair project with him.
Okay.
So my scientists do know?
Yo.
No.
You.
No.
You.
He's
Anyways,
not a scientist either.
It doesn't matter. Okay, calm down. Let's all calm down. Take a break.
You calm down.
So obviously, there's no changing your mind, and there's no changing the minds of the people who believe it was absolutely faked. Even if we show definitive, if we put the people who don't believe the moon landing happened on the moon right now, obviously they would die because they wouldn't have spacesuits. But if we strapped them to the rocket and shot them up there, and back, they would be like, okay, well, we didn't go in 1969. Like, we're not disputing that we could get to the moon now, but in 1969 we couldn't. But that's the point. A lot of the rocket and engineering technology that we have existed back then. The rockets, yes.
Rockets, yeah.
Rockets. I mean, we had
remember the
IBCMs.
Challenger?
Yes, and there is a story behind that. There was a group of, I believe they were Mormons that were contracted to make certain objects for the Challenger spacecraft.
Okay, maybe we should just wait.
Yeah.
And just make this an episode on itself.
Yeah.
Because this sounds like it's going to be a little bit more involved.
Oh yeah, it's a huge one. It's huge. It
So
will blow your mind.
We'll wait and do an episode on that
Yeah,
because
it will have to be. It'll have to be next season because this season is jam packed of fantastic episodes.
What year was the Challenger explosion?
90s, I think. Early
I know
90s.
it was the 90s.
Yeah, it was the first time they ever put civilians on a spacecraft, and probably the last. No offense to the people who were lost in the Challenger, which would sucked. And I think it was the first time they had women on the board too. I don't know. We'll have to go more into that when we do an episode on it. But
Next season.
Yeah, next season because
Next
this season is jam packed. Next episode, Jeffrey Dahmer.
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yes, the cannibal with the strongest mandibles. Yeah. Anyways, and we're doing a Haunted Places Part 3. We're doing the Menendez brothers.
Are we still looking for suggestions for Haunted Place?
Yes, we are, and we've gotten a lot of suggestions so far.
We're still waiting.
Yeah, we're
looking
waiting.
for the perfect one. So if you have any
Perfect
suggestions,
ones. We're doing
that's
several.
true. That's true. If you have any suggestions, you can
Go to Facebook or our Facebook page or my Alexander Dartarian, or you can shoot us an email at the Alex and Dom Show at gmail.com, or go to our link tree. There's a lot of information to get a hold of us. Then we would greatly, or put it in the comments below. Obviously, but yeah, we're super excited about that episode. We're also doing the Manhattan Project or the nuclear war race. Don't roll your eyes. It's important.
not that. It just pisses me off. The whole thing.
I know. But like I said, this season's so jam-packed, full of stuff. So we're super excited to talk about all of this stuff. Hopefully Dom will be joining us for the majority of them, if not all. But we appreciate you listening, and tell us in the comments if you believe if the moon landing was fake or not.
We listen and we don't judge.
I hate that TikTok trend. I hate it so much. I'm getting so fed up with TikTok.
Well, on the bright side, it's getting banned.
It's not getting banned, but oh well. Anyways, we thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Alex and Dom Show when we talk about the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. Bye.
Bye.